Alien General Vrek's ship descended onto Earth with mechanical precision, its polished hull gleaming under the midday sun. The spacecraft settled in a dusty clearing outside a small U.S. town, the kind of place with a single gas station, a diner, and more pickup trucks than people. Vrek stood on the ramp of his ship, his towering figure backlit by the glow of alien technology, and surveyed the mundane scene. He had studied humans extensively from afar, watched their broadcasts, analyzed their patterns, even sampled their digital art, which he found embarrassingly sentimental. To Vrek, humanity was an open book. Predictable. Simple. Major James Larkin stood at the edge of the clearing, arms folded, waiting for the alien to approach. With his military posture, neatly pressed uniform, and stoic expression, he looked like the poster boy for Earth's diplomatic efforts. His sandy hair and sharp blue eyes gave him the air of a man who was competent and unflappable, but not overly formal. He'd been briefed on Vrek's reputation an alien general who'd masterminded countless galactic campaigns. Vrek's people. The T-Krell valued logic above all else. They believed every species could be understood, categorized, and strategically outmaneuvered. Larkin had one job: make sure Vrek didn't leave Earth with the wrong impression. Vrek descended the ramp with deliberate precision, his gleaming silver armor catching the light. His angular face remained expressionless as his six-fingered hands clasped neatly behind his back. "Major Larkin," he said, his voice smooth but devoid of warmth. "I am here to observe your species and determine your place within the galactic hierarchy. I anticipate no surprises." Larkin raised an eyebrow. "Glad to have you, General Vrek. I'll be your guide while you're here. Hope you don't mind small-town America. It's not as flashy as some of our cities, but it's got character." Character, Vrek repeated, tilting his head. "An intriguing euphemism for inefficiency." Larkin chuckled. "Well, let's see if we can't change your mind." For the next few hours, Larkin took Vrek on a tour of the town. They walked down Main Street, where people waved politely and went about their business. Vrek observed with clinical detachment, noting the orderly flow of traffic, the predictable exchanges at the grocery store, and the unremarkable rhythm of human life. He tapped notes into a sleek device strapped to his wrist, muttering observations to himself. "Fascinating," Vrek said at one point. "Your species exhibits a high degree of conformity. These patterns mirror those of subdominant species across the galaxy. Your reliance on routine suggests an aversion to chaos." Larkin smirked. "You haven't met my brother's kids. But sure, we like things to run smoothly." As they walked, Vrek's confidence in his analysis grew. He cataloged humans as a species driven by basic survival instincts and prone to emotional outbursts. Their politeness, he concluded, was a superficial veneer to mask their otherwise predictable behaviors. He felt no need to revise his initial assessment: humanity was unimpressive. Sensing Vrek's growing smugness, Larkin decided to throw him a curveball. "You know," he said casually, "there's one place you might want to check out before you finalize your little report." Vrek glanced at him, unimpressed. "And what, Major Larkin, might that be?" "A bar," Larkin replied with a grin. "It's where humans relax, let their guard down. If you want to see the full range of what we're capable of, you've got to see us off the clock." Vrek raised an eyebrow. "A recreational drinking facility?" I failed to see what value such an observation would provide. "Trust me," Larkin said, his grin widening. "It'll be enlightening." Intrigued despite himself, Vrek agreed. Moments later, they stepped into Joe's Tavern, a dimly lit establishment filled with the sounds of conversation, laughter, and clinking glasses. Neon beer signs buzzed faintly on the walls. A jukebox in the corner played a country tune, and a group of regulars gathered around a pool table, arguing about stripes versus solids. The air smelled of spilled beer and fried food. Vrek scanned the room, his analytical mind immediately at work. He noted the seating arrangements: small clusters of humans gathered in what he interpreted as tribal units. He observed drink choices, cataloging the variations as he tried to discern their significance. He even analyzed body language, deciding that the loudest patrons were likely the dominant members of this micro-society. "Primitive but functional," Vrek remarked, his voice cutting through the noise. "This environment appears to reinforce social bonding through shared intoxication, a predictable behavior." Larkin leaned against the bar, ordering 2 beers. "You keep using that word, predictable. I think you're about to see just how wrong you are." Vrek stared at the amber liquid placed before him. "I do not ingest fermented substances." Suit yourself, Larkin said, taking a swig. Just observe. That's what you're here for, right? As Vrek continued his analysis, a commotion began to stir across the room. Two men, seated at opposite ends of the bar, were escalating a disagreement over a football game. One was a wiry guy in a faded Patriots jersey, the other a burly man with an Eagles cap pulled low over his eyes. Words flew, tempers flared, and before long the burly man shoved his stool back with a loud scrape. "What is occurring?" Vrek asked, his gaze narrowing. "Just wait," Larkin said, almost amused. The wiry man stood as well, jabbing a finger toward the larger man's chest. Voices raised. The bartender tried to intervene, but it was too late. The burly man swung first, knocking the smaller man back into a table of horrified onlookers. Chaos erupted. Vrek froze, his analytical mind spinning. He hadn't anticipated this. Humans were supposed to value order and social cohesion, yet here they were, abandoning all rationality over something as trivial as a sports rivalry. "What madness is this?" Vrek muttered, stepping back as the fight spilled into the center of the bar. Larkin took another sip of his beer, unfazed. "That," he said, "is unpredictability." Vrek had taken up a position at the edge of the bar, silently observing the unfolding chaos with the intensity of a scientist dissecting an anomaly. His metallic fingers twitched against the sleek device strapped to his wrist as he logged data at an almost frantic pace. Across the room, the wiry man in the Patriots jersey was now squaring off against the burly Eagles fan, their dispute drawing a growing crowd of onlookers. Drinks sloshed as patrons jostled for a better view, voices rising in a chaotic symphony of half-hearted attempts to mediate and gleeful encouragement to let the fight escalate. "This was inevitable," Vrek declared with a note of smugness, glancing at Larkin, who leaned casually against the bar as if utterly unbothered. "A classic case of territorial posturing. Both males seek to assert dominance within their micro-tribe. It is a predictable behavioral pattern, one I have documented extensively in analogous species across the galaxy." Larkin didn't even look up from his beer. "Sure, Vrek. Whatever you say." Vrek's eyes narrowed. He had spent decades cultivating his reputation as an unflappable authority on the behavioral dynamics of sentient species. Yet here was this human, this annoyingly relaxed human, challenging him with nothing more than a smirk and a sip of overpriced lager. The alien general straightened his posture, determined to reassert control over the situation. "Observe closely," Vrek said, gesturing toward the scuffle. "The conflict will soon follow a predictable resolution pattern. One party will establish physical superiority, the other will submit, and the social order will stabilize." Larkin turned to him, a trace of amusement dancing in his eyes. "That your official prediction?" Indeed, Vrek watched the scene intently, his expression a mask of confidence. "This is merely a demonstration of primal instincts. A minor disruption in an otherwise orderly social environment." As if on cue, the wiry man landed a surprisingly well-aimed punch, sending the larger man stumbling backward into a table. Gasps and cheers erupted from the crowd, followed by a burst of laughter from a particularly loud group near the jukebox. Before Vrek could comment, another patron, a young woman in a denim jacket, stepped forward. But instead of diffusing the situation, she egged them on, shouting, "Oh, come on, you call that a punch? Let's see some real action." "What?" Vrek said slowly, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Is she doing?" Larkin chuckled, stirring the pot. "That is illogical." Vrek's fingers hovered over his device, unsure whether to log this as an outlier or a complete breakdown of his theoretical framework. "Why would she escalate the conflict? She gains no strategic advantage from doing so." "Entertainment," Larkin replied, as if the answer were obvious. "Sometimes people just like a little chaos." Vrek stared at him, struggling to process this information. "You're suggesting that humans deliberately provoke disorder for amusement?" "Not always," Larkin said with a shrug. "But yeah, it happens. Welcome to Earth." The fight continued to spiral out of control, drawing in more participants. What had started as a simple dispute over spilled beer and football allegiances had now snowballed into a full-blown barroom argument. Chairs scraped across the floor as patrons took sides, shouting over one another in a cacophony of accusations and insults. Meanwhile, others leaned against the walls, sipping their drinks with wide grins, clearly enjoying the spectacle. This is chaos," Vrek exclaimed, his composure slipping for the first time. "There's no order, no logical progression. How can this species function with such erratic behavior?" Larkin raised his glass in a mock toast. "We call it rolling with the punches. You'd be surprised how good we are at it." Vrek's jaw clenched. He could feel his carefully curated theories unraveling with each passing moment. The T-Krell prided themselves on their ability to predict and manipulate the behaviors of other species. Yet here he was, confronted by a scenario that defied all reason. He quickly cycled through possible explanations in his mind. Was this an isolated cultural phenomenon? A localized aberration? Or had he fundamentally misunderstood the nature of humanity? Desperate to regain some semblance of control, Vrek turned his attention to the growing crowd. He began categorizing their reactions, searching for patterns he could latch onto. There were the instigators, like the woman in the denim jacket, who seemed to thrive on the chaos. Then there were the bystanders, content to watch from the sidelines without intervening. And finally there were the mediators, a small but determined group attempting to restore order, though with limited success. Fascinating, Vrek muttered, half to himself. Even within this disorder, your species exhibits stratified roles: instigators, observers, and peacekeepers. A primitive yet adaptive response to conflict. Glad you're finding it educational, Larkin said dryly. He signaled the bartender for another drink, as if this were the most normal evening in the world. The argument reached a new peak when the bartender, a grizzled man with a bald head and a perpetual scowl, slammed a wooden bat onto the counter with a deafening crack. All right, that's enough, he bellowed, his voice cutting through the noise like a whip. You want to fight? Take it outside. The rest of us are trying to have a good time. To Vrek's astonishment, the room fell silent. The burly man and the wiry man exchanged sheepish glances before muttering half-hearted apologies. The crowd dispersed, returning to their drinks and conversations as if nothing had happened. Within moments, the bar's lively atmosphere had resumed, the earlier chaos fading into a distant memory. Vrek blinked, utterly bewildered. How? How did he do that? Larkin grinned. Authority. Bartenders are basically gods in places like this. That hardly seems sufficient to explain such a rapid de-escalation. Vrek shook his head, his frustration mounting. Your species operates on no discernible logic. How can you transition so seamlessly from disorder to calm? Larkin leaned closer, his expression equal parts teasing and serious. Here's the thing, Vrek. You can study us all you want, write up your little reports and build your fancy theories, but at the end of the day, humans don't fit into neat little boxes. We're messy, unpredictable, and yeah, sometimes downright chaotic. But that's what makes us who we are. Vrek stared at him, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. For the first time in his career, he felt unsure of himself. Could it be that humanity's greatest strength lay not in their conformity, but in their capacity for unpredictability? As the jukebox switched to a new song and the chatter of patrons filled the air, Vrek sank into a chair, his confidence shaken but his curiosity piqued. He had come to Earth expecting to confirm his superiority. Instead, he had encountered a puzzle he couldn't yet solve. Larkin raised his glass. Here's to the rest of the evening. Something tells me we're just getting started. The lull was short-lived. Just as Vrek began to piece together the fragments of his shattered analysis, the tension in the room reignited like a dormant volcano. A man in a cowboy hat, slouched at the far end of the bar, accidentally bumped into a woman carrying a tray of drinks. The tray tilted, glasses spilled, beer cascaded onto the floor. The woman gasped, the man stammered an apology, and before Vrek could even log the event, someone else, an unrelated third party, shouted, "Watch where you're going, you clumsy idiot." It was the spark that lit the fuse. Within seconds, the bar was alive again with chaos. A chair tipped over. A pool cue snapped midair. Someone screamed, though whether it was from anger or giddy excitement, Vrek couldn't tell. The earlier fight had been a localized event, but this was bedlam on a grander scale. Drinks flew through the air like missiles, shattering against walls and tables. Laughter mingled with shouting, creating a cacophony that Vrek's auditory sensors struggled to parse. This is madness, Vrek shouted, ducking as a bowl of peanuts whizzed past his head. He turned to Larkin, who was still perched at the bar, casually nursing his beer, as though he were watching a mildly entertaining sitcom. Why is no one attempting to contain this? Larkin shrugged, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. Bar fights have a rhythm to them. You just gotta let it play out. Let it play out, Vrek's voice pitched higher than he intended, his usual composure unraveling. This defies every principle of conflict resolution. Not everything needs resolution, Buddy. Larkin gestured toward the chaos with his glass. Sometimes it's just about blowing off steam. Vrek's incredulity deepened as he scanned the room, his gaze darting between the various skirmishes unfolding around him. Two men in flannel shirts grappled near the dartboard, their movements so clumsy and uncoordinated that Vrek couldn't discern an obvious victor. Nearby, a woman in high heels had climbed onto a table, shouting something unintelligible while swinging an empty beer bottle like a scepter. In the corner, a man with a remarkable mustache was meticulously protecting his nachos from the crossfire, swatting away projectiles with a plastic menu. And then, to Vrek's utter astonishment, he witnessed an act of profound absurdity. Amid the chaos, two men who had been grappling on the floor suddenly paused. One, a burly man with a shaved head, offered his opponent a hand up. The second man, a lanky figure with a bandana, accepted the gesture. Together, they stumbled to their feet, straightened their disheveled clothes, and clinked their half-empty beer bottles in a bizarre gesture of camaraderie before diving back into the fray. "What is happening?" Vrek demanded, gesturing wildly toward the pair. "Why would adversaries exhibit mutual respect in the midst of combat?" Larkin chuckled, clearly enjoying himself. "It's not about winning or losing, Vrek. Sometimes it's just about the experience. A good fight can bond people." "Bond?" Vrek repeated, his voice laced with disbelief. "This is not bonding. This is chaos manifest." "Sure," Larkin said, tipping his glass toward the scene. "But tell me this, when's the last time you saw a fight end with two guys sharing a drink? That's humanity for you, my friend. We're complicated." Vrek opened his mouth to argue but found himself at a loss for words. He had studied thousands of species, each with its own unique social structures and conflict dynamics. Yet nothing in his extensive experience had prepared him for this, a scenario where combat and camaraderie coexisted in such baffling harmony. As if to underscore the point, another unexpected act of humanity caught Vrek's attention. A bottle, thrown with impressive velocity, careened toward a young man who was crouched near the jukebox, seemingly trying to fix it mid-brawl. Before the bottle could reach its target, a middle-aged woman, someone Vrek was certain the young man didn't even know, stepped in to deflect it with her forearm. The bottle shattered, and while the woman winced in pain, she waved off the young man's concerned reaction with a grin, muttering something Vrek couldn't quite hear but that seemed to put him at ease. "She just protected a stranger," Vrek said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yep," Larkin replied, popping a peanut into his mouth. "That happens too." Why Vrek's question wasn't rhetorical. He truly didn't understand. What logical incentive exists for her to endanger herself for someone with whom she shares no apparent connection? Larkin shrugged. Maybe she felt it was the right thing to do. Maybe she's just a good person. Or maybe she's going to ask him for a favor later. Hard to say. Vrek felt the foundations of his worldview tremble beneath him. The T. Krell thrived on predictability, on the assumption that every action could be traced to a logical motivation. Yet here he was, immersed in a scenario where logic seemed to be an afterthought at best. He had anticipated chaos, but he hadn't anticipated this blend of unpredictability, camaraderie, and absurdity that defied categorization. The fight finally began to wind down, not because of any decisive intervention but simply because participants seemed to lose interest. Bruised and battered patrons returned to their seats, laughing as they recounted their exploits. Apologies were exchanged, though often with a slap on the back or a playful shove rather than words. The bartender, who had been polishing a glass with a level of disinterest that bordered on zen, finally set it down and surveyed the wreckage with a resigned sigh. "Well," he muttered, "could have been worse." Vrek stood in stunned silence as the room settled back into a semblance of normalcy. The tables were rearranged, chairs were righted, and the jukebox, now miraculously functional, resumed its playlist. A man with a black eye approached the bar and ordered a round for the group he had just been fighting, eliciting cheers and a toast that spilled more beer onto the already sticky floor. "I don't understand," Vrek admitted, his voice quieter now. He turned to Larkin, his usual air of superiority replaced with genuine curiosity. "How can a species thrive amid such chaos? I came here expecting to find simplicity, yet your kind is anything but." Larkin finally set his glass down and faced Vrek, his expression softening. "You're right. We're not simple. We're messy and emotional and unpredictable. But that's why we survive. We adapt. When things fall apart, we figure it out. When we fight, we find ways to make up. You can't reduce us to data points, Vrek. That's not how we work." Vrek stared at him for a long moment, processing the words. He had spent his entire career dissecting the behaviors of other species, cataloging them into neat categories that could be exploited for strategic gain. Yet here was a species that refused to fit into those categories, a species that thrived precisely because of its refusal to be defined. Perhaps Vrek said slowly, I have underestimated your kind. It wouldn't be the first time someone did, Larkin said with a grin. But, hey, at least you're learning. As the bar erupted into laughter over some shared joke, Vrek allowed himself a rare moment of self-reflection. For the first time, he considered the possibility that unpredictability wasn't a weakness to be corrected but a strength to be embraced. And as he watched the patrons raise their glasses in a toast to nothing in particular, he found himself almost admiring them. As the bar settled into its peculiar post-chaos rhythm, the patrons began clearing glasses, repositioning chairs, and sweeping shards of broken bottles into piles with the casual efficiency of people who had done this many times before. Vrek observed them with silent fascination, his gaze lingering on how quickly order was restored, not through structured commands or hierarchical intervention, but through a shared, unspoken understanding. It was as if the chaos had only strengthened the bonds between everyone present. Larkin stretched and stood from his stool, patting the bar counter lightly. All right, Vrek, let's get out of here before someone decides to start round 2. Vrek hesitated. His data was incomplete, his understanding of these humans still fractured, but he nodded reluctantly, following Larkin toward the door. Patrons waved to them as they passed, grinning as if they hadn't just been participants in an all-out brawl. One man even called out, "Come back soon, Major." "Next round's on me," Larkin responded with a quick salute, his easygoing demeanor a stark contrast to Vrek's stiff formality. Once outside, the cool night air offered a welcome reprieve from the chaos inside. The streets were quiet, illuminated by the dull glow of streetlights and the faint hum of distant traffic. Vrek stood still for a moment, his glowing eyes scanning his surroundings as if seeking clarity in the stillness. Larkin glanced at him, head tilted slightly, as if waiting for the alien to speak. Finally, Vrek broke the silence. "I must admit, Major Larkin, that I have gravely misjudged your species." Larkin raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh yeah? How so?" Vrek clasped his hands behind his back, his metallic joints clicking softly in the night. "Your behavior defies the principles upon which I have based my understanding of sentient life. What I witnessed in that establishment was not merely chaos, it was a demonstration of adaptability and resilience. Despite the lack of logic, your kind appears capable of finding equilibrium, even in the most disorderly circumstances." Larkin smirked. "Adaptability's kind of our thing. If there's one thing humans excel at, it's figuring out how to make it work, no matter how messy things get." Vrek nodded slowly, his mechanical fingers tapping idly against his wrist device. "Your kind's capacity for adaptation is unparalleled. Even in conflict, you exhibit an ability to repair social bonds and restore balance. Such traits suggest a complexity I had not accounted for." Larkin chuckled, his breath visible in the crisp air. "Here's the thing. Vrek, we're not just good at adapting to the world around us. We surprise even ourselves sometimes. When everything looks impossible, that's usually when we pull off something nobody saw coming." "Provide an example," Vrek said, his tone more curious than commanding. Larkin leaned against a lamppost, his relaxed posture a stark contrast to Vrek's rigid stance. "All right, I'll give you one. Ever hear of Apollo 13? Vrek narrowed his glowing eyes. "The designation is familiar. A space expedition, correct?" "Yeah, but not just any expedition. It was a mission to the moon back in the 20th century. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. An oxygen tank exploded, life support systems failed, and the crew was stranded hundreds of thousands of miles from Earth with no clear way to get home." Vrek tilted his head, intrigued despite himself. "And yet they survived." "They did. Mission Control and the astronauts worked together, improvising solutions with whatever they had on hand. They used duct tape, a sock, and a plastic bag to fix their air filtration system. Duct tape, Vrek. They didn't give up, and they didn't panic, not for long. Anyway, they used their ingenuity to turn an impossible situation into a story of survival." Vrek considered this, his fingers steepled in thought. Such resourcefulness is commendable. It suggests an ability to transcend logical constraints when necessary. "It's more than that," Larkin said, his tone softening. "It's about hope. Even when things seem hopeless, humans find a way to keep going. We're stubborn like that." Vrek was about to respond when the bar door swung open behind them. One of the patrons, a wiry man with a lopsided grin, hurried out into the street. He carried a worn leather jacket draped over his arm and jogged toward them, his boots clapping against the pavement. "Hey, Major," the man called out, slightly breathless. "You left this behind." Larkin turned, surprised, as the man held out the jacket. "Oh, thanks. Didn't even realize I forgot it." "No problem," the man said, his grin widening. "Figured you'd want it back. Night gets cold out here." Larkin took the jacket, nodding in gratitude. "Appreciate it." The man tipped an imaginary hat before heading back toward the bar. Vrek watched him go, his glowing eyes narrowing slightly. He exerted additional effort to return an item that was not his responsibility. Why? Larkin slipped on the jacket, zipping it up against the chill. Kindness, Vrek. Sometimes people do things just because it's the decent thing to do. Kindness, Vrek repeated, as if testing the word. An illogical expenditure of effort with no expectation of reward. Maybe it's not logical, Larkin admitted, but it's what makes us human. The alien stood in contemplative silence, the faint hum of his wrist device the only sound between them. For Vrek, this simple act of kindness felt like the crux of everything he had been struggling to understand. Humanity's unpredictability, their capacity for chaos and compassion, their simultaneous messiness and magnificence, it all culminated in moments like this. Moments that defied logic yet carried profound meaning. "You are far less predictable than I assumed," Vrek finally said, his voice tinged with humility. "And that's a strength, not a weakness," Larkin replied. "You said it yourself, adaptability, resilience, ingenuity. That's what allows us to survive, even thrive, in situations that should break us." Vrek turned to face him fully, the faint glow of his eyes reflecting the streetlights. "I must revise my report on your species. My initial assessment of humanity as simple and inferior was deeply flawed. You are a species of contradictions, yet those contradictions form the core of your potential." Larkin smiled, a quiet pride evident in his expression. "Glad to hear it. But don't just take my word for it. Stick around a little longer, and you'll see even more of what we're capable of." Vrek considered the offer, though he knew his mission protocol dictated otherwise. "Perhaps another time. For now, I must return to my ship. This night has given me much to reflect upon." Larkin nodded, extending a hand. "Safe travels, Vrek? And hey, don't be a stranger." After a moment's hesitation, Vrek clasped the human's hand, an awkward but genuine gesture of mutual respect. Then, without another word, he turned and began walking toward the clearing where his ship awaited. The cool night air swirled around him, carrying the distant sounds of the town's nightlife and the faint echoes of laughter from the bar. As Vrek boarded his ship and prepared to depart, he glanced once more at the glowing screen of his wrist device. The events of the evening replayed in his mind, the chaos, the camaraderie, the kindness of a stranger returning a forgotten jacket. These were not data points to be cataloged, they were fragments of something deeper, something he couldn't fully quantify but now understood was essential. When his ship lifted off and ascended into the stars, Vrek didn't feel the triumph of one who had completed a mission. Instead, he felt something rarer, the humbling realization that he still had much to learn. Humanity, in all its messy brilliance, had shown him that the greatest strength lay not in predictability but in the ability to surprise even oneself. And as his ship disappeared into the night sky, the bar fight became, in his mind, a symbol not of chaos but of resilience, adaptability, and the infinite complexity of the human spirit.